You ever walk through a city and just wonder what makes it feel the way it does? Why one street feels open and breezy, but the one right next to it is stuffy and, well, airless? It's not a coincidence. There's actually an invisible blueprint, a whole set of rules shaping our world. Today, we're going to decode that blueprint.
Yeah, we've all felt it, right? You're walking down a street in the summer, you're surrounded by these massive skyscrapers, and it feels like you've just walked into an oven. The air's just sitting there, the heat's bouncing off the concrete, you just can't catch a break. So what is actually going on?
Well, the problem is that all those huge, tightly packed buildings start to act like the walls of a canyon. They literally block the wind, they trap the sun's heat, and they stop hot air from getting out. This whole thing creates what scientists call the urban heat island effect, and it can make a city way, way warmer than the countryside just a few miles away. And look, this isn't just about being uncomfortable. It's a huge deal for public health and how much energy our cities guzzle.
So, how do you even begin to fight back against the concrete jungle? Well, you don't just hope for the best. You create a plan, a blueprint that's specifically designed to help the city breathe again. And this isn't just some nice idea. It's a real, official strategy to engineer a better city.
And in one of the most jam-packed cities in the world, Hong Kong, that plan has a name, the Sustainable Building Design Guidelines. We'll just call them the SBD Guidelines. This is the exact blueprint we're going to unpack.
And if you look at the official goal right from the guidelines, it's crystal clear. They say they want to achieve better air ventilation, enhance our living space, provide more greenery, and mitigate the heat island effect. It's not just about construction, it's about engineering a better quality of life for everyone. The goals are right there.
So, you might be wondering, how do you actually get giant development companies to follow these rules? Well, you give them a pretty powerful incentive. If they design more sustainable buildings, they're literally allowed to build more. They get what's called extra gross floor area. It's a classic carrot on a stick. You help us build a better city, and you get a bigger building out of the deal. Pretty smart, right?
Okay, so these guidelines are basically built on three big ideas, three pillars that all work together. First, rules about the space between buildings. Second, rules about the space between buildings and the street itself. And third, rules that say you have to include green space. Let's break down each one.
All right, pillar number 1. This one tackles one of the biggest problems you see in dense cities, those massive slab-like buildings that just form a giant wall, blocking pretty much all the airflow. The whole point here is to punch holes in those walls, to create what you could call wind corridors.
Now, to get this, we have to talk about one key concept, permeability. The easiest way to think about it is like a sponge. A permeable building isn't just a solid block of concrete. It has holes, gaps, open floors, places for the air to actually flow through it. The more permeable a building is, the better the city around it can breathe. And this isn't just a friendly recommendation. Nope. The guidelines have hard numbers. For most big building projects, at least 20% of the building's face has to be open space. And for the really huge ones, we're talking super tall towers on massive plots of land, that number jumps up to a full third. That is a huge amount of open space that has to be engineered right into the design.
So what's the outcome of all this? You get these intentional wind corridors. These aren't just lucky gaps between buildings. They are designed, planned breezeways that channel fresh air right through the city, cooling things down and just making life better for everybody on the ground.
Okay, so we've got air moving through the buildings. Pillar number 2 brings us down to street level, where we actually walk and live. This is all about making our streets feel less like dark canyons and more like spaces for people.
And this rule is super specific. It's not for every street. It targets one of the most common and, let's be honest, often unpleasant parts of a city, the narrow street. We're talking any street that's less than 15 meters wide. These are the spots that get a special design intervention.
And the difference this makes is, well, it's night and day. Without a setback, you get those classic street canyons, right? They're dark, they feel really imposing, and the air just feels stale. But with a setback, you push the buildings back from the curb, and the whole vibe changes. You get more sunlight, you get more airflow. It completely transforms a street into a place you actually want to be. And again, the rule is incredibly precise. On these narrow streets, no part of a new building can be within 7.5 meters of the street's center line. That simple number guarantees an open corridor down the street that's 15 meters wide and 15 meters high. It's just one number, but it completely changes how it feels to walk down that street.
All right, on to our third and final pillar. We've made space for air to move. Now, let's bring in one of the most powerful cooling tools we have, nature itself. This part is all about fighting heat by mandating greenery.
The rule here is really straightforward. If you're doing any kind of decent-sized development on a site that's bigger than 1,000 square meters, you can't just build with concrete and glass. You are required, by the guidelines, to set aside a chunk of your area for living, breathing plants. And they mean it. For mid-sized sites, a minimum of 20% of the entire area has to be green. And for those really big sites, it goes up to 30%. I mean, think about that. That's a huge chunk of valuable land that must be used for landscaping. It's not an afterthought, it's required infrastructure.
And this isn't just about planting a few trees in a little plaza. The guidelines actually encourage developers to get creative. This green space can be at ground level, sure, but it can also be up on rooftops, turning all that unused space into cooling gardens. Or it can even climb right up the side of buildings as these incredible green walls. So let's put it all together. These three pillars, building separation, building setbacks, and all that greenery, they aren't just abstract rules on a piece of paper. They are actively, physically sculpting the city that you walk through every single day.
So the next time you feel a cool breeze funneling between two big towers, you're not just getting lucky, you're feeling a designed wind corridor. When you're walking down a narrow street but it still feels bright and sunny, that's a building setback at work. And when you look up and see a lush garden on a rooftop, that's a mandated green space. This is your city by design.
And that's really the crucial point here. The feeling of a city, the comfort, the light, the air, the little bits of nature, none of that is an accident. It is the direct result of deliberate, careful design choices. These guidelines are like the invisible hand shaping a city that's more livable, more breathable, and hopefully more sustainable.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? As our cities get bigger and face even tougher challenges like climate change, blueprints like this one are going to be more critical than ever. So I guess the big question we're left with is, what's next? What should the next generation of these rules look like?